Hey guys, so today we're going to take a look at this Engenius Multi-gig Switch. If you're a power user and you have many things going on in your home, from a NAS to maybe home security and lights, this is something that could certainly make everything a lot easier to manage. So let's get some networking started. Hey guys, Tiago here with Classical Technology. Remember to subscribe and smash that like button. So today, let's talk about this network switch. Now, Engenius sent me this for me to take a look and to evaluate it. And I've been going over all of the features and what this can actually get done so that I can make a decision and see who this type of switch would be for. Now, of course, primarily this will be very useful in the business environment because after all, it is a cloud managed switch and businesses may have various connections that they have to keep track of, from like store security to maybe even their payment systems, the lights, everything. So who is this switch for aside from sort of a business user? Now, if you're more of like a casual gamer or just a casual user where you have your computer plugged in, directly to your router, and perhaps you don't really have a million things going on, generally, this is not going to be for you because, the price probably won't be worth it. A lot simpler solutions are probably just fine. It's not going to be worth to spend the money on this unless you're much more of a power user. Now, this is basically why a power user would need a switch like this. Think of your router and your modem. They're both communicating. They have to get information from the internet into your local network. If you only have a couple things connected, that's typically okay and goes pretty fast. But now imagine if you have various things connected. We're talking about your workstation PC, perhaps even a gaming PC, your home theater setup, a lot of sort of home music services like Sonos, they use your network as well. You can plug them in with an Ethernet cable. And then of course, you're going to have NAS. You're going to have sort of your lighting system, like a Philips Hue system. All of those connect to your network, not to mention home security. So imagine you're running all of those things through one router. If you guys have ever seen the specs on some of these high-end routers, they have CPUs and RAM. They pretty much are small computers. So if your router really isn't that advanced, or even if it is and you're trying to push all of this from the internet through the router, through your home network, that's certainly a lot to manage. And that's why you need to separate it with a switch that has the proper power distribution to be able to take care of all these items. For example, this Engenius switch can handle up to 240 watts. So even if you had 8 different things connected, you could get around 30 watts per connection. Or let's say if you have 4, you can bump it up to 60. And with a lot of power hungry networking devices nowadays, that's certainly going to make sure that everything is going to run much smoother. Now, this switch is also going to be well equipped to handle Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi 6. That's going to be sort of the newer standard that's really opening up. And I was surprised at how good Wi-Fi 6 speeds actually are. I was the type that when I used to play games, I used to always want to connect it with an Ethernet cable. But as the newer generation motherboards and PC components started to offer Wi-Fi 6, the first thing I did was get a Wi-Fi 6 router, and I said, wow, this is actually pretty impressive. My games were functioning great, even in workstation use when I was transferring large files all over the place, definitely working great. So Wi-Fi 6 in general was a really nice upgrade. If you guys use Wi-Fi a lot, as I know a lot of people do, even though Ethernet cables feel a little bit more enthusiast or old school, definitely a pain to wire your whole house or make it more of a connected network. Wi-Fi 6 in many cases definitely going to be the first upgrade that I recommend to you guys. And when you pair that type of wireless technology with a switch like this, that's where the magic really starts happening, because then you could use this switch at all of those different items that an enthusiast would have. And for things that you basically want to use Wi-Fi for, let's say if you're streaming, sort of like just content consumption on your iPad, maybe like a smart TV, you can use Wi-Fi for that. Other things that I personally like plugging into a switch or router like this, certain things like, let's say if you have a Sonos network music in your house, things like that, if I can, at least the hub I like to plug in with a physical Ethernet cable, just so you ensure sort of the the best connection without any disruptions. And everything else can be Wi-Fi. And of course, even if you're running something like a NAS and constantly backing up files, the main NAS system I like to connect with an Ethernet cable. If there's a nearby computer, I like to connect that as well. Everything else, if it's not really time sensitive, then you can just download via Wi-Fi, but certainly in sort of like a power user type of household, you definitely need fast Wi-Fi for the things that require that reach, but you also want to have a switch like this to take care of sort of the other items that are just way too powerful and would maybe overwhelm that Wi-Fi network. So if you have something like this set up, there are going to be various ways you can actually manage it. Of course, the one that maybe a lot of people may like will be the actual cloud management. That's pretty cool because let's say if you're not at your business or at home, you could check in with the network and change things around, being sort of in a remote place. Certainly very, very useful. Of course, Engenius also has their own software that you can connect and be able to do many of the same things. And of course, there's also the traditional logging in from, your network on the browser and being able to access it that way. I think certainly that's why you'll get something like this over maybe like regular switches that don't have this type of integration, just because if you need that type of control and being able to manage it from anywhere, something like this will definitely be very well featured to do that type of activity. The performance and the power that it actually has for the features, for the size, sort of for its price point, makes a lot of sense for maybe like a prosumer or maybe an enthusiast. Of course, the typical gamer or in the typical gaming setup, it's definitely going to be overkill, but for somebody who has a lot of stuff connected, it could definitely start to make a lot of sense. For example, in my setup, these are the things that I like to use. First, there's my workstation computer where I like to do videos and things like that. Very, very bandwidth intensive because I'm always moving around very large files from cameras. A lot of times it's like raw footage and you have to back up a lot of those files as well. So it takes a lot of bandwidth. So if you just have like a, 1 gigabit port, that's not going to do it. You need at least something faster like 2.5 gigabit, or now there are even, 10 gigabit LANs and things like that you can set up. So that's the primary use. Second, even having a workstation computer, of course, always have a second gaming computer. And as you know, like latency and problems like that, you never want to deal with when you're doing a game, especially a competitive game. So it's nice to be able to have enough power to sort of, power that, keep that separate. The QNAP NAS, you can connect it to your PC or your Mac either via Thunderbolt 3 or with a 10 gigabit cable, something that's used very, very often, as well as I like to use Sonos, so I connect that to the network as well. And then of course you have all of your other smart home stuff, like if you have cameras, if you have, the smart lights, those are all things that each require a certain amount of power. If you have all of those going through one router at once, definitely going to be a big, big bottleneck. So at least this way you can ensure that all of your activities, and especially if you're streaming this on YouTube at, 4K resolution, and it's not going to be skipping all the time or having issues, and everything else is working in the background if you're uploading files to your NAS or something like that. A switch like this is a fantastic integration and proper power management of everything that you have in a wireless and in a wired network. So I think that for people that want to get a little bit deeper into networking and to having multiple devices, this is definitely going to be a very nice entry point because it's going to give you sort of the power requirements that you need, as well as the features to really get started. All right, guys, so that's pretty much this Engenius switch in a nutshell. Now, I'm not a networking expert or anything like that. I'm glad Engenius sent this to me. I certainly learned a lot about it. I plan to do more in-depth sort of networking videos in the future as well. But as a great starting point, having the features that I needed, really, really enjoyed the process of learning this and getting to work with it. So let me know if you guys use a switch or a more complicated home network. Let me know what you think. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.